Hello, I'm Thomas here, Chief Content Officer of the Performance Driven Marketing Institute, a not-for-profit trade association that serves companies in the performance and direct-to-consumer marketing world. Welcome to the latest episode of Take 20, created by the PDMI's Brand Response Council. These 20-minute live conversations featuring leaders in the performance marketing world, speaking about the hottest topics in the industry, are scheduled twice monthly. Before we get to today's conversation, a housekeeping note, we'll be addressing any questions from the audience at the end of today's session, but you don't have to wait to ask them. Utilize the questions tab on your control panel to type and send your question in. We'll be collecting them and we'll try to get to as many as possible in the final moments of this episode. Following up on last week's conversation about the first combined election Olympics year since 2016 and how performance marketers' media options may be affected, today, Brand Response Council Chair Chris Foster, moderating Postcard, will dive deeper into the election year media pool by welcoming JamLoop political ad sales leader Rich Crone. This is CTV's first big election cycle. Will political advertisers flood that new zone? And if so, how might that affect traditional TV's political and performance media avails? That's among many questions we're going to get to today. Welcome to you both, Chris and Rich. Take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Thomas. And Rich, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. We're really ready to learn from your expertise and experience. And there was another Rich last week who had expertise and experience, Rich Radzik from Advocado. And he mentioned in last week's Take 20 that the 2024 election cycle is poised to eclipse $10 billion in media spend. The lion's share proportionally will go to linear, but one insightful statistic was that CTV, a relative newcomer into the omnichannel marketing space, is projected to have as much spend as digital, over $1 billion. The dramatic increase of CTV interest and spend will undeniably change the election advertising trends for 2024 and beyond. And as more Gen Zs move into voting age, courting that massive 69 million strong generation with the marketing channels that they're most familiar with, well, it's going to be an interesting story to follow. So, Rich, CTV and election advertising, we're going to dive into this beautiful uncertainty of what's to come and what might be indicators for future election cycles. So I started a little bit, I touched on Gen Z, and I want to jump into that because while we mentioned them as an audience, Pew Research shows that millennials are approaching the boomers as the largest voting demographic bloc. So how does getting impressions in front of those groups fit into existing and future CTV viewing trends?
Great question. First off, thanks for having me. I am honored to be invited to help continue the narrative for the political campaigns, and thanks to you and Tom for the PDMI efforts here. So to answer your question, for the CTV being able to reach those significant voting blocks, traditionally, most of the voting, or most of the sort of political agencies had a traditional adults 35 plus model, and that was their primary sort of go-to automatic 35 plus. I think where we're seeing sort of a significant younger voter and viewer being more informed and more involved, they have to come up with alternative and additional strategies to hit that sort of voting block, probably 18 to 34. CTV, naturally, you would assume, does attract a younger audience. And with that, having to be able to have sort of the right sort of messaging and media in place to be able to capture that younger audience. But don't forget the silver streamers out there. Those are your active voters, but there's a significant block that people, 55 plus, who are watching streaming TV and CTV, all the different devices.
Right. So no, I love that. It kind of cuts across. I guess one thing about CTV is that, and OTV, I could say, they're very complex bidding mechanisms, and they allow for much higher targetability based on consumer behavior, intent, and even CRM data if needed. Does this play into the hands of political advertisers who are looking to better target their audience?
And I'll be a bad politician, I'll answer your question directly. Yes, it does. And within that, it does lend to data targeting as an advantage. For example, we can say Republicans, adults 35 plus, who are primary voters that are heavy news watchers. That is significant data. With the mention of $10 billion being spent, there's now an accountability through research and data to support those investments. So campaigns and candidates want to see data supported sort of proposals to be able to target that audience that they're trying to do. One thing significantly with JamLoop and CTV and streaming TV, the geo-targeting. If you can imagine where the streaming TV is, that targeting capability, we're probably where cable was 20 years ago, whereas you had the broadcast coverage area, and then the cable zone got inside of that, which was an advantage to try to hit better districts. Well, streaming can get inside that political district right to the letter. So right in my own backyard, our Georgia state senator, he has a district that covers 3 different counties. He would have to buy 3 different cable zones, not with streaming or not with CTV. He can purposely use the data and the zip codes that can target that exactly. We have over, TransUnion is our main data source. We have over 30 data providers. L2 is probably the political currency and the ad community dealing with political campaigns. We can use that data and all of our sources to strategically hit an audience and a geo or by, party, race, or activity.
It's so interesting you mentioned that, because when you look even the most recent election and you look at the county level voting patterns, it's very granular, right? So you actually know which counties are going to be voting which way. And so drilling down to that zip code level, I think really helps political advertisers figure out who they're actually reaching with, and probably even, Rich, would think, adjust the messaging as needed. Is that correct?
100%, that they will know where their voters are coming from all of their data, and a lot of campaigns are coming in well informed. And if they know what zip code that is really hot or responding, they can, turn that sort of volume off. But if they have a zip code that's not as working well within the district, they can turn that up again, and then we can have more impressions go directly to that zip code. Where, it has the flexibility, and I think through our campaign dashboard, we're seeing in real time where those impressions are placing. And that's a proprietary campaign dashboard that is probably not commonplace out in the marketplace, that we can able to adjust and accordingly put more emphasis on a particular zone where a candidate is trying to hit a particular area for his campaign message.
That's interesting. And a question for you. I don't know if it's this good, but so I'm in Tierra Santa in San Diego. It's a family neighborhood, right? Got schools and all the gobbledygook. Very different neighborhood than, let's say, Little Italy or the East Village, which is downtown. It's urban, right? Youngsters and young professionals are there. What we need from candidates as a voter is slightly different from what they need. Can a candidate using the CTV and using your geo-targeting actually have different creative for these different zones and zip codes?
Absolutely. It lends to that, because we can be able to change out that creative on a dime. And I think the speed and the responsive nature that our ability to change out that copy on the fly within like a 2-hour time frame, versus, as you know, in the hot and heavy campaign, you have some campaigns, attacking, can they have a response ad, up? Like, we don't have any of those sort of arbitrary deadlines or sort of copy restrictions to get something on like the next day or 24 hours later. We have the ability to, and our campaign management team is second to none, to be able to respond with the speed necessary when it gets combative in a race like that, and being able, but more importantly, to articulate, like you said, one population in one zip code can be completely different 3 zip codes away, right? And can have the creative to target and speak to that audience in those respective areas.
I love it. And it's what I love also too about political advertising is how positive it is usually, especially so complimentary towards the other candidates. I think that really helps with the discussion and the political discourse.
Oh,
So
I can sense
question.
this little facetious. We do like to say, if it's more competitive and more combative, it's a good thing that they exchange. The pleasantries and niceties don't seem to generate as much response or revenue. So
That's that's true. That's true. I got a question for you. Beyond the creative side, of course, budgets are a thing, right? And a budget is this beautiful Thanksgiving pumpkin pie, right? You've got this big wedge that's off to linear. When you're talking with clients, perhaps even before they carve off a chunk to linear, what do you recommend they do in terms of allocating those slices to various channels?
well, I'm a hungry Howie and I want the whole pie. And no, and just really, truly in professional responsibility and a recommendation, the reality is linear will still take up 50% or just over 50% of that pie. And if you basically look at the political pumpkin pie as $1, I do believe that linear broadcast will take 50 cents. It is
Sure.
my belief and a bold prediction that I think CTV could pass cable this year. And if cable did 17% of that 9 billion spent in 2022, cable will, I say they stay possibly at 17% next year of 10 billion or 11 or however much is placed. And I'm not picking on, yes, I have great friends and colleagues in the broadcast and cable. And I do think those are viable and valuable components for a big sort of market and a big push for a campaign to use all of it. And then I think CTV would be probably 18, 19%. I think we could beat.
Okay.
And then that keeps digital, radio, and cable digital, radio, and satellite grouped together.
Mm-hmm.
That would be 13, 14%. And
Got
so
it.
that was where they were. I say cable and those digital, radio, and cable stay 13, 14. But I do think CTV will take the most growth. I think I can boldly say CTV will be the most growth of 2024's political spending.
Yeah, I believe you. I think that that's true. I think that that's true. And what I'm really curious about is beyond 2024, what happens in 26 and 28, right? Especially as the changing nature of those voters change. I mean, 2028 is 8 years from now. So you have someone who's 10 or 12 years old, they're going to be of voting age. A lot of those kids have never seen regular TV in their life. And so the CTV is going to be a natural channel for them. So, all right, let's talk then about some timelines, right? I know we talked about we just talked about 2028, right? 2026, but 2024 is like, I don't know, a handful of weeks away, literally. And you got political about 10 months, right, to flood the channels with this advertising. When does the spend start happening, and how does the spend allocated over the course of next year?
Great question. I mean, the overarching narrative is the presidential sort of race, right? And so that could be as active in January, or it's active going on now in those respective places, Iowa and New Hampshire, and the overarching sort of presidential. I think the real sort of machines for the primary starts mid-January, like in California where you are, the March 5th primary. We have 8 states that are active with primaries in March. So that spending should start pick up into January, into February. And then I do believe the primary season presidential, it may or may not be as active based upon the nominations or the polling indicating that the foregone winners of being Biden and likely Trump, that may or may not have as much placement later in the year. But I do think the summer is going to be robust with you've got conventions, you've got Olympics, as you mentioned last week with Rich and Advocado. Those 14 days in the Olympics, there will be 7 states that have a respective state primary. And,
Wow.
and that'll interact and intersect with the Olympics. The conventions, and I think August sort of rolls right into the general election. And you said, how will it be spent? traditionally 60% of the revenue is spent from the general election on. So that leaves probably 30% in those primaries and 10% sprinkled around the first part of the year and the early summer. It's not so much about when, it's about what and where. And so what they call top of the ballot is president, US Senate, US Congress, governor. Those make up top of the ballot, and that makes up 2/3 of that $10 billion. But that 1/3 leaves $3 billion to the down ballot races, and that's state house, state senate, city, county. So where JamLoop fits in navigating, just knowing our sweet spot, that we begin in our backyard and then go beyond. And I think looking at that, but that's like the when is it going to happen, what races are going to happen, but where. There are 33 Senate races next year and 11 governor races. And just like we had in Georgia last year here in 2022, we had a Senate race and a governor race combined. There's going to be 8 states that have that situation going on this year to look out for. Those are hot spots for activity on the top of the ballot. And all of that money is going to be flowing with, issue support and party support to help those candidates win in those respective states and places.
That's fantastic. I love it. That is what a brilliant answer, and so in depth and on point. I'm really interested too about that third going to the down ballot, because that's so local and it plays just to what you talked about with zip code level targeting. It's a perfect fit. We've got time for a couple more questions. I guess, what is this big aha moment that you've had now with CTV and election advertising, coming from your history where you were before?
I think it's really been able to sort of talk streaming to the linear TV people and then talk TV to the digital people. So finding sort of our communication and being able to communicate effectively to those different respective camps. But I think the aha that I have seen with candidates is, hey, I can go right to the district, zip codes without any waste. And for years, agencies have been asking, can I get down to the zip code? And that is sort of a significant targeting, geo-targeting that, like you said, what we're saying, we're going to go build it in our backyard and beyond. So I think that's been an aha. Another aha has been the transparency with our campaign dashboard. That proprietary dashboard is one thing that we had problems with, was how many impressions are running, where is it running, and is it running? And this is basically tells you in real-time basis where every impression is going, with transparency that you can make adjustments, or you will know if we're not fulfilling, or what do we got to do. And like I said, it's a continual assessment, adjustment, and improvement to run that schedule to fulfillment.
Yeah, it sounds an awful lot like it's high responsive performance marketing in the digital space, right? I mean, that's the tried and true of what you can do. We have time for one last question, and I need you to give you the most fantastic answer you can. What kind of creative advice, what are the ads that are best going on CTV?
Ones that work. I think, no, and working with the campaigns we've worked for years, they really want to be consistent with message clarity, message consistency, and being on message with all of the communications that come out, whether that be the direct mail piece, whether that be a TV commercial, whether that be their campaign website. And so having that message clarity and consistency is key. And that does work within the commercials. And I would say the 3 things that they all want to do: connect the voters, raise funds, and get elected. And I would say, for example, here in our own backyard, I use Georgia again. Raphael Warnock, Senator Warnock had the 2020, race, and then he ran again in 2022. Probably the most commercials I've ever seen produced by any political campaign ever. He had over 60 pieces of different commercials and copy, and using, but not every campaign has that kind of production budget to make that many commercials. However, they raised the most money, and I don't know which came first, the media, messaging, or money. And within that, it's just being able to have that consistency through their campaign and the creative. The creative that I would say recommending is the 30-second commercial, and one that they can use in combination to run on our video pre-roll as a consistent sort of online and on-air streaming TV opportunity to have that same sort of message being wherever a viewer or voter would see it.
Wonderful. God, what an answer. We could spend all day talking with you, but we're running out of time, and I'm sure we've got some questions from the audience. So, Thomas, we've got some questions from the folks.
We sure do. We have 3 or 4 good ones. We'll try to wedge in as many and respect the time of our attendees. But here's the first one. If you see a candidate performing well or alternatively not well using CTV and geo-targeting and voting zones, have you seen a candidate deploy other forms of media like linear, direct, social that help the campaign? And what kind of mix have you seen that's worked that has helped in turn the CTV campaign?
Great question. Like we said earlier, CTV is a component within the bigger campaign sort of marketing efforts, and there will be tweaking, right? And we have seen and recognized, hey, this is not resonating, or we're not getting a response in one area, and would they sort of adjust? And I think honestly, the learning that we've had in these early sort of campaigns is it's a continual effort to look to see what's working in a zip code or tracking that. And I think as you guys in the performance marketing space, you guys are getting sort of a feedback loop to see what's working. And I think being able to listen to sort of either the reports, but I do think the campaign dashboard provides us sort of real time to say, down to the IP and device level, is this message getting to that particular audience?
Mm-hmm.
Great. The next one, obviously there's a national race and many local races. From what you're saying, CTV's media can serve both national and local needs, and its abilities locally are pretty impressive. Do you think or possibly foresee a vast amount of political spend in CTV because of that locality, opening up linear TV local for performance marketers possibly?
I do. Our campaign strategy here is backyard then beyond. And I think that's what's the word? There's going to be oceans of impressions out there next year for all of the political messaging and media. I mean, oceans of it. But really, truly, all you care about is the beach access you use and what's going to be in your own backyard of what you see on what you're watching in your own living room, on your own device. And are you getting overwhelmed by political campaign ads at these particular times? And so how do you, as a consumer, how do you sort of navigate with all of those impressions? Are you going to be an influenced voter? Are you going to be an aggravated voter? Are you going to be one to take action and get out and vote based upon the messaging you get in your own sort of experience of your tablet, your iPhone, or your TV that you're watching?
Yeah, great. There were a number of statewide and local races in the off-year election a week ago. Do you have like 1 or 2 things that you might have learned about CTV's capabilities from that limited sample? And do you think it provided a good warm-up for 2024?
Yes, we had a city council race. It was actually just 1 zip code. And I always strongly recommend and learning that you need a little scale, right? So, and being able to have the ability, we delivered on all of our campaigns 100% fulfillment. And I do believe learning was an aha reality that this is you have to monitor and adjust. And thank God we have one of the best campaign teams out there with their hands like on that bidder in the system, being able to navigate and get us the spots necessary to fulfill the right impressions for that campaign. We had one running in Long Island in New York that it was, we were a week out and just kind of looked to see where the pacing was and was able to make the necessary adjustments to fulfill accordingly. So it is, like I said, it's not a set it and forget it like in some places and other, either broadcast or cable. This is a commitment that we're a platform partner with these campaigns to deliver the impressions they've entrusted with us.
Right. One more, and depending on the length of your answer, maybe another one.
I'll be short.
On linear, news stations and news programs are obviously a great medium to place political ads. Are there similar hotspots in CTV or fast channels to place political ads?
Great question. We put together a news only group, right? From all of we have over 300 TV publishers, a litany of digital publishers, and put together a news only group because kind of, there's still some old school buyers that just buy the local broadcast news for their political campaigns. It is our professional recommendation to don't die on the mountain of buying just the news only. And what we did was provide news lookalike alternatives. I will say the best success for linear campaigns was to go deeper, because an impression is an impression is an impression. And if you're buying a premium on one of the top 5 cable networks of either Fox News, CNN, HGTV, or MSNBC, why die on that mountain when you can be much more cost effective with a comparative audience that's in a much cheaper sort of alternative that's just as effective at delivering that impression without the cost of a premium nature of either local broadcast news. I still say probably live sports is a great way to integrate and use broadcast and cable. And I think the integration of using the streaming and the CTV to complement in there, because we see the viewership. I mean, Nielsen just reported in July for the first time ever, streaming and digital combined past broadcast and cable. I mean, broadcast and cable came back strong in August, but I do see that toggling back and forth until streaming was at 38%. Once that gets in the low 40s and mid 40s, I think it'll be no looking back for streaming to take the lead of over 50% and beyond.
Great stuff, Rich. I will ask this one last question. Coming from the linear side at Comcast into CTV at JamLoop, what's the key difference or one difference that you can offer buyers now in CTV that you couldn't in your previous role?
Great question. Fulfillment with transparency. We had trouble. Comcast was great to me and a great company in providing the cable direct. Our OTT CTV offer was not as robust as we were like a third party reseller kind of downstream. What I found out at JamLoop by being in the upstream sort of source and more importantly being the platform, we have a lot more control of that flow and have the direct relationships with the TV publishers as kind of an upstream partner, and can be able to monitor that and provide that at a greater value, as not having a middleman in the middle having to charge at a different premium. That JamLoop as a CTV sort of option, that we were able to provide a value with fulfillment, but probably the most significant difference is the transparency with the campaign dashboard, that you can see it in real time. So I will leave it with, I mean, if there's one nugget to kind of finish you with is at JamLoop, we don't want to be just a vendor selling impressions with transactions. Our goal is to be a platform partner to fulfill schedules that deliver with transparency through our campaign dashboard. If you looked at one little significant a vendor of selling transactions or a partner delivering fulfillment with transparency.
Tremendous stuff, Rich. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time today. Chris, thank you as always for leading a great discussion. We appreciate it. We hope that both of you have a great rest of your day. Thank you on behalf of all of our attendees. I think you gave them a lot to think about. Our next Take 20 episode is Wednesday, November 29th, when we'll look at how changing consumer behaviors are affecting the effectiveness of the data performance marketers use on a daily basis. I thought affecting the effectiveness was going to trip me up, and it was the other part of the sentence. Please visit thepdmi.com/take-20 to register for the webinar and check out the upcoming schedule. Finally, online registration is open now for PDMI East, April 8th through 10th, 2024 at Eden Rock, Miami Beach. We have about 2 weeks left in our early bird registration where you can save $100 on each badge. It's $295 for PDMI members and $495 for non-members through November 30th. Plus, you'll be at the head of the line to book your room at the host hotel, the Eden Rock, Miami Beach. Visit thepdmi.com/PDMI-East to get your badge today. Thank you again for checking out this episode of the PDMI's Take 20. Be well. Happy Thanksgiving. Take care. Bye-bye.